Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today I want to talk about something that's significant, especially if you have pets. Your hose can leach chemicals. Now, it's not an over worry, but I think it's something you should understand, and there's ways that you can prevent it, and there's ways you can reduce the harm to potential pets. My dog loves drinking water out of the hose, and I don't want to be spraying this on leafy greens and then eating it the next day. Let me explain to you how the toxins form inside of a hose. Just about every garden hose you purchase will have a warning on there saying don't drink from it. I've not found a hose that says safe to use for drinking water. They probably exist, I've just not seen them. A hose is made up of all kinds of different chemicals to keep it flexible so that it bends and it doesn't degrade in the sun. When you leave your hose out like I do, and there's water in there, it heats up. It can get to temperatures over 100 degrees. That helps add to the leaching. This still happens when the hose is colder. When you have water sitting in there, it will absorb the chemicals in the hose. So one thing that you can do to fix the problem is to let your hoses drain out between use. This way there's no buildup of chemicals in there. And it's really important because you don't want to have the concentration of chemicals getting onto your leafy greens, going to your dog, and you certainly don't want to take a drink out of it. This is Willow, and this is who I want to protect and make sure she doesn't get that water that's been sitting in the hose. Make sure you clear it out. I have a pretty large garden, so the hose is always bringing water out to the garden. Now again, you could bury the hose, you could retract it every time, keep it out of the sun, make sure it stays drained, and that really reduces the leaching of the chemicals into the water. That's not so practical for me. Here's how you know if your hose is leaching chemicals. You're going to notice this more after a day or two has passed since using the hose because you've rinsed the leaching chemicals out of there. When you turn the hose on, you spray, you're going to see a foam. It's a little bit more foamy initially, something like that, and it goes away pretty quickly. That foaming, and I'll show you what it looks like after the chemicals are cleared out of here. That initial foaming is really the leached chemicals mixing with the water. Also, if you smell the water, bring it to your nose, it's going to have a menthol, minty smell to it. That's just the signal clues that you have leached chemicals in concentration, in a concentrated form coming out of your hose. You don't want to give this to your plants. You don't want to give this to your dog. You certainly don't want to drink this. And Lucky was my first dog. My dog Willow loves drinking out of the hose, and I didn't really recognize this until about a month or two ago. Luckily, I don't give her any of the water right away because it's usually too hot, but there are chemicals in it. The water from the black hose that I showed you just made it through the gray hose. Why is that important? Watch this foaming action. That is the chemicals that are being leached out of that hose. And that's what it looks like. And you can see the steam coming off of there. You don't want that. I can smell that menthol smell, that minty smell now. That's the problem. So I'm going to just make sure I run the hose long enough because when you're spraying, you can still see it looking like soap. You want this to go, again, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's been a good 3 minutes. The first foaming action I showed you was more of the water coming out of this gray hose. And it was there, and I could smell the menthol smell somewhat. When the water from the black hose made it out here, it was really hot, and it was much stronger and much worse. So now when you spray, there's a lot less foaming. And this is water that's coming out of my well now. And sure, with the water going through the hose, maybe there's some leaching, but I'm not really worried about that. This is what you want the hose water to look like before you start watering. You also don't want to spray your seedlings with hot water. When we come back over to here and we give it a quick spray and stop, the foaming is gone. So we've cleaned the hose out. And that's the whole key, is that you want to just let this run for that 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it takes, so that you are running clean, cold water through here. The leached chemicals are now out in the ground. You could, spray this somewhere else. I've been using hoses for 20 or 30 years, and hopefully, nothing weird's going on with any of us. But it's that initial concentration of leached chemicals that you don't want to give to your pet, you don't want to drink from the hose, and you don't want to hit your plants. If I don't do that process of clearing the water out of the hose, and I'm watering my kale, leafy greens, cabbage, collards, you know, and I soak them in, give them their watering, and then those concentrated chemicals dry on the leaves. It doesn't rain. I come back a couple days later, pick the leaves. I don't want to be eating that. I don't know if those concentrated chemicals will, you know, be picked up by the plant roots and go into the plant leaves. But I do know that if you try and water your seedlings with water that's 110, 120, 130 degrees, it could damage them. So you do, if not for just cleaning out any chemical concentrations in your hose, you want this to be nice, cool water coming down and taking care of your seedlings. The hose has been used for 15 minutes. All the concentrated leach chemicals are gone, and this is when my dog is allowed to have a drink of water. She loves drinking from the hose. Just don't let them drink until that water is clearly gone through the entire hose, so that they're not getting a concentration of leached chemicals. Again, you're looking for that foaming action that stays on the surface of the water, a minty smell, and that lets you know that your hose is really releasing a lot of chemicals into the water that's stored in the hose. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. And I just want to clearly say that using a hose in the garden after you clear the water out that's been sitting in the hose for a day or so isn't going to harm you, isn't going to harm your pet, isn't going to harm your garden. But it's that initial concentration that of chemicals that, you know, gathers when the water sits in the hose that you really want to clear out of the hose line. That's what you don't want your pets drinking. That's what you don't want to be drinking. That's what you don't want to coat your leaves with, or the leafy greens, or anything that you're going to be eating. Again, don't over worry about it, but I thought it was really important for people to understand that hoses, when the water sits in there, can store up some of the leached chemicals, and they come out in a concentration right in the beginning. So just get rid of that before you take care of your garden. Thanks for watching.